What happens when Hollywood's most smug late-night host tries to humiliate a guest on live television? It takes just 34 seconds, one cutting remark, for Jimmy Kimmel to torch his own reputation and remind everyone that some celebrities truly believe they're untouchable. The stage lights were blazing like wildfire as Mark Wahlberg strode out, owning the moment with quiet confidence. He had every reason to. He'd just wrapped up promoting his latest action-packed blockbuster, and everyone expected an easygoing chat about his career, his family, and maybe a few good laughs. But Kimmel had something else in mind, and it wasn't friendly. "So, Mark, welcome back to the show," Jimmy said, flashing that plastic grin that looked more like a warning than a welcome. Then came the jab. "I gotta ask, how does it feel being Hollywood's most overpaid tough guy?" The crowd froze instantly. You could practically hear the electricity in the air turn into silence. Mark's jaw tensed, but he didn't flinch. Calm, composed, professional, he simply replied, "Jimmy, I am here to talk about the movie. The crew worked really hard on this project." Yet Kimmel wouldn't let it go. He leaned back in that oversized chair, smirking like he was the king of late-night comedy, ready to twist the knife. "Oh, come on, Mark. Everyone knows you just show up, flex a little, say a few lines, and walk away with $20 million. Must be nice living that easy life," Jimmy quipped, pretending it was a joke, but it was pure insult wrapped in sarcasm. Mark's eyes darkened. The playful banter was dead. "Easy life? You want to talk about easy?" He shot back, voice steady but dangerous. "Try waking up at 4 every morning, training for months, doing your own stunts, while others sit behind a desk, making fun of people who actually work for a living." The temperature in the studio skyrocketed. You could almost see the heat waves shimmering off the tension. Jimmy's grin faltered, his confidence cracking right before the cameras. "Whoa, whoa, somebody's getting a little defensive," Kimmel stammered, trying to laugh it off, pretending to stay in control. "I'm just saying, some of us had to work our way up the hard way. Not everyone gets handed movie roles just because they've got muscles. That was it. The line that crossed every boundary." Mark leaned forward, eyes blazing like fire. "Handed to me? Are you serious right now?" he demanded. "Do you know what I was doing when I was 15? I was fighting to survive on the streets, while you were probably sitting in some fancy college learning how to mock people for a paycheck." The room went ice cold. Not a single person dared move. Even the camera crew froze, afraid to break the spell. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was confrontation at its rawest. Jimmy tried to laugh, but the crack in his voice gave him away. "Hey, I'm just trying to have some fun here. It's all jokes, Mark. Relax." Mark wasn't buying it. "You invite me on your show just to disrespect everything I've worked for?" he said, his tone firm, every word cutting deeper than the last. "You think having a microphone and an audience gives you the right to tear people down?" He wasn't shouting, but that calm intensity made every syllable echo like thunder. "I've been acting for over 20 years. I've produced films, built businesses, and given back to my community. And you're sitting there telling me I don't deserve it?" Jimmy's smugness melted on live television. His voice wavered. "Look, I didn't mean—" "No, you meant exactly what you said," Mark interrupted sharply. "You thought you could bring me on here, make me look like a dumb musclehead, and get a few cheap laughs. But here's the thing, Jimmy. I wasn't born into privilege. I didn't have rich parents or Hollywood connections. Everything I've got, I earned with my own 2 hands." The silence in that studio was deafening. You could hear people shifting uncomfortably in their seats, some nodding in agreement while others stared in disbelief. Jimmy made one last desperate attempt to recover. Okay, let's just move on to the movie. Tell us about—" "No," Mark cut him off with finality. We're not moving on. You started this, so let's finish it. His voice rose, not in anger, but in conviction. You want to talk about the hard way? I was arrested as a kid. I made mistakes, real ones that hurt people. I've spent my entire adult life trying to make it right. While you sit here making jokes about others, I've been learning how to be better. The fire in his words was undeniable. Every sentence hit with the force of truth, leaving Kimmel visibly shaken in front of millions of viewers. This wasn't some polished Hollywood monologue. It was raw emotion, unfiltered and real. I work 16-hour days when I'm on set, Mark declared, his voice steady but charged with intensity. I study scripts until 2 in the morning. I train with real fighters and real cops, so I can give audiences something genuine. And you want to call that easy? Kimmel looked completely out of his depth now. His usual sarcastic smirk had vanished, replaced by the uneasy look of a man caught off guard. His writers hadn't prepared him for this. There was no punchline to save him this time. Mark, I think you're taking this a little too seriously, he stammered. Too seriously? Mark fired back, eyes blazing. My work is my life. The people I work with, the stories we tell, the audiences who spend their hard-earned money to see those films, that's serious to me. What's not serious is sitting behind a desk and throwing cheap shots at people who are actually creating something. The cameras kept rolling, catching every twitch, every flicker of emotion. This wasn't just another late-night moment. It was something historic, raw, and unforgettable. You know what the difference is between you and me, Jimmy? Mark continued, his voice calm but powerful. When I fail, there are real consequences. Movies lose money, people lose jobs, fans lose faith. But you can say whatever you want, tear down whoever you want, and tomorrow night, you'll be right back here doing it again. Kimmel looked like he wanted to disappear. His hands trembled as he reached for his coffee mug, hoping to steady himself. But Mark wasn't done yet. You want to know what's really easy, Jimmy? He said, slicing through the tension like a blade. What's easy is hiding behind comedy. What's easy is pretending that tearing people down is just entertainment. Kimmel's hands shook as he set the mug back down, trying to fake composure under the blinding studio lights. But the cracks in his confidence were showing for everyone to see. Mark, I think we should probably take a commercial break, he muttered. No breaks, Mark snapped, leaning forward with controlled fury. You wanted this conversation on live television, so let's have it. You think I don't know what you really think about actors like me? You think we're all just pretty faces with no substance? The audience was completely locked in. Some people had their phones out, secretly recording every second of this meltdown that would soon flood social media. I've been in this business long enough to know the difference between someone who respects the craft and someone who just sees us as punchlines, Mark continued firmly. And right now, you're showing everyone exactly which one you are. Kimmel let out a weak, nervous laugh that sounded more like a gasp. Come on, Mark. You're being way too sensitive here. It's just comedy. People expect me to roast the guests a little. Roast? Mark's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're just being mean for the sake of being mean. There's a difference between comedy and cruelty, Jimmy. The heat from the lights was unbearable now, but most of it was radiating from Kimmel's panic. His usual charm had completely evaporated, replaced by visible sweat and fear. Look, if I offended you, I apologize. That wasn't my intention, he said weakly. Your intention? Mark shook his head slowly, his disappointment cutting deeper than anger ever could. Your intention was to make me look stupid, so your audience could laugh. Your intention was to boost your ego by putting down someone who's actually accomplished something. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise. Behind the cameras, producers were panicking, waving their arms, whispering frantically, unsure how to save the show. But Mark wasn't finished. "You know what bothers me most about this?" he continued, passionately. "It's not even about me. It's about every young actor out there, those just starting out who have to sit in these chairs and let people like you mock their dreams just to promote their projects." Kimmel was squirming like a fish out of water. His eyes darted toward the wings, silently begging for someone to rescue him from the chaos he'd created. "I've been fortunate enough to make it in this business, so I can defend myself," Mark said, his voice growing stronger with every word. "But what about the kid from Boston or Chicago or anywhere who works 3 jobs just to afford acting classes? What happens when they sit across from you and you decide their story isn't worth respecting?" The power in Mark's words was undeniable. It was truth echoing through that studio, cutting deeper than any scripted line ever could. "Mark, I really think you're overreacting," Kimmel muttered weakly, his voice trembling. "Overreacting?" Mark stood from his chair in one swift, commanding motion. The entire studio fell dead silent. "Let me tell you what overreacting looks like. Overreacting would be me walking over there and showing you what a real tough guy does. But I won't do that, because I'm a professional." Kimmel's face went pale white. For a second, it looked like he thought Mark might actually come across that desk. Instead, Mark took a deep breath, sat back down, and fixed his eyes on the host. "I'm going to sit right here and explain to you and everyone watching why what you're doing is wrong," he said with unwavering control and authority. "This industry is hard enough without people in positions of power using their platforms to tear others down." Mark's words cut through the silence like thunder. The air inside that studio felt heavy, every second stretching into eternity as the audience waited for Kimmel's response. Finally, the host managed to find his voice again, his tone trembling. "Okay, I hear what you're saying. Maybe I came on a little strong with the jokes." "A little strong?" Mark let out a sharp laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Jimmy, you basically called me a talentless fraud on national television. That's not coming on strong. That's character assassination." Kimmel was trapped now, and everyone could see it. Every word he tried to say only made things worse. "I didn't mean it that way," he mumbled weakly. "Then what way did you mean it?" Mark challenged, leaning forward with piercing eyes. "Because I'm a-sitting right here. Look me in the eye and tell me what you really meant when you said I was overpaid and undeserving." The host couldn't do it. He couldn't even look Mark in the eye. His gaze darted to his note cards, then to the audience, anywhere but at the man sitting across from him. "That's what I thought," Mark said quietly, his voice low but powerful. "You can dish it out, but you can't defend it when someone finally calls you on it." The audience was completely hypnotized by the unfolding drama. It was more riveting than any blockbuster, pure, unscripted truth spilling out under the harsh studio lights. "You know what the saddest part is?" Mark continued, his tone softer but even more devastating. "You actually have talent. You're funny when you're not being cruel. You could use this platform to lift people up, to celebrate their achievements, to make people feel good about themselves. Instead, you choose to punch down." For a moment, something flickered in Kimmel's eyes. Shame, anger, or maybe both. Then his mask slipped entirely. "You think you're so much better than me?" he snapped, his voice sharp and defensive. "You think because you've made some action movies that makes you some kind of saint? Everyone knows about your past, Mark. Everyone knows you were a thug before you were an actor." The room froze. Even the cameras seemed to stop moving. You could feel the shock ripple through the crowd. Mark's face didn't move, but something cold and dangerous flashed in his eyes. "There it is," he said softly, almost whispering. "There's the real Jimmy Kimmel. When you can't win with comedy, you go straight for the personal attacks." Kimmel realized instantly that he'd gone too far, but it was already over. The damage was done, and there was no taking it back. "Mark, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," Mark interrupted, his voice like ice. "You absolutely meant it. You've been waiting for the perfect moment to bring up my past, haven't you? You thought if you could make me angry enough, I'd give you the reaction you wanted." Kimmel was spiraling now. His confidence was gone, replaced by pure panic as his reputation unraveled live on national television. "That's not true. I would never—" "You just did, Jimmy," Mark shot back, his voice slicing through the air. "On live television, in front of all these people." He stood up slowly, every movement deliberate, commanding complete silence from the room. The entire audience held its breath as Mark looked down at Jimmy Kimmel, with a mix of disappointment and controlled fury. "You want to talk about my past?" Mark said quietly, but every word carried weight like a hammer blow. "Fine. Let's talk about it. Yes, I made mistakes when I was young. Serious mistakes that hurt people. And you know what I did about those mistakes, Jimmy?" Kimmel couldn't speak. He just sat there, frozen, wide-eyed, like a deer caught in the headlights. "I own them," Mark continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I didn't hide behind comedy or pretend they were just jokes. I faced the people I hurt. I apologized. I worked to make things right. I spent years learning how to be a better person." The power in his words was absolutely devastating. Each sentence hit Kimmel's crumbling facade like a wrecking ball, stripping away every ounce of arrogance he had left. "But what you just did," Mark went on, his voice sharp with conviction, "bringing up someone's past just to hurt them on television, that's who you are right now. Not 20 years ago, not as some stupid kid, right now." Kimmel tried to interrupt, his voice cracking with desperation. "Mark, please, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "You're sorry?" Mark's laugh was cold and bitter, echoing through the silent studio. "You're sorry because you got caught showing your true colors on live television. You're sorry because your little plan backfired, and now everyone can see what kind of person you really are." Not a single person moved. The audience sat frozen, completely stunned by what they were witnessing. Even the crew had stopped in their tracks, transfixed by the confrontation that was now being etched into live TV history. Mark leaned forward, his voice steady but sharp enough to cut through the tension like a blade. "Do you know what the difference is between my past mistakes and what you just did?" he asked, eyes locked on Kimmel. "When I hurt people, I was a confused kid from the streets who didn't know any better. But you're a grown man with a platform that reaches millions, and you chose to use it to try to destroy someone." The words hit Kimmel like a freight train. His hands trembled, his face drained of color, and beads of sweat trickled down his forehead as the weight of Mark's words crushed him in front of a silent nation. "I didn't mean to destroy anyone," Kimmel whispered weakly, his voice cracking under the pressure. Mark's tone hardened, his fury controlled but lethal. "Then what did you mean to do, Jimmy? What was your plan here? Make me look bad just to get a few laughs? Make yourself feel superior by tearing down someone who actually earned their success?" Kimmel sat there frozen, completely stripped of words and dignity. The entire studio watched, breathless, as a man who thrived on humiliation became its latest victim. "You want to know what's really pathetic?" Mark continued, his voice filled with controlled disgust. "I came here tonight to promote a movie that employs hundreds of people, good, hardworking people, and you turned it into your own therapy session just so you could feel better about yourself." The audience gasped as Mark began unhooking his microphone with calm precision. "Those people deserve better. The audience deserves better. You deserve better than what you just showed everyone tonight." The studio's energy was electric. No one dared blink. Kimmel's voice broke the silence, desperate and trembling. "Mark, Please don't leave. We can fix this. We can edit it. His words reeked of panic, but Mark's glare froze him in place. Edit it? He shot back furiously. You want to cover this up? Pretend it never happened? That's your solution? Kimmel's voice wavered as he scrambled for a lifeline. We could start over. Do another interview. But Mark shook his head slowly, his disappointment cutting deeper than anger. There's not going to be another interview, Jimmy. There's not going to be a do-over. This is who you are. This is who you chose to be tonight. The audience sat in awe, watching a man reclaim his dignity, live on air. Mark set his microphone down on the coffee table between them with deliberate calm. You know what the saddest part about all this is? He said softly, looking Kimmel dead in the eye. I actually used to respect you. I thought you were one of the good ones. I thought you understood what it meant to work hard and treat people with dignity. Kimmel's tears streamed freely now, his face crumbling under the weight of regret. But Mark wasn't done yet. But tonight, he said, his voice like thunder wrapped in steel, you showed me that success doesn't change everyone for the better. Sometimes it just gives cruel people a bigger platform to show who they really are. The silence in the studio was deafening. Even the air felt heavy. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every flicker of emotion as Mark straightened his jacket. I'm going to leave now, he said firmly. Not because I'm running away, but because I have too much respect for myself to sit here and let you keep disrespecting me. Every word echoed through the hall like a final verdict. He turned to walk off the stage, then stopped and looked back one last time. And Jimmy, he added, his tone icy yet calm, next time you want to attack someone's character, make sure your own can survive the same test. The entire room froze. Kimmel tried one last desperate plea. Mark, please, I'm begging you, don't leave like this. His voice cracked, pleading for mercy, but Mark only gave him a look filled with pity and quiet finality. You should have thought about that before you turned this into a hit piece, he said coldly. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. And with that, Mark Wahlberg walked off the Jimmy Kimmel live stage, leaving behind a broken man whose career would never recover from those 34 seconds of pure, unfiltered arrogance. The cameras stayed on as Kimmel sat alone, tears streaming down his face, realizing the brutal truth. Some lines should never be crossed, and some people should never be underestimated. The audience sat in utter disbelief, having just witnessed not a talk show, meltdown, but a masterclass in grace, strength, and self-respect. In that haunting silence, Jimmy Kimmel learned the hardest lesson of his career. Respect is earned, never demanded.